I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
In 1911, an Italian nationalist decides that the Mona Lisa really belongs in Italy. So he dresses up as a worker and on a Monday, which was when the museum was closed, goes in, takes the Mona Lisa off the wall, hides her under his coat, leaves with her, and keeps her in a suitcase under his bed for however long until he goes back to Italy and then tries to sell her. And that's when he gets caught. But it took about 2 years before the Mona Lisa was rediscovered. Actually, that says maybe it'll take that long before the crown jewels get found, but that's for later in our discussion.
That is today's guest, Elaine Sciolino, talking about one of the reasons why the Mona Lisa, and by extension the Louvre, the museum that houses her, is so famous. Dare I say, iconic. Elaine goes on to explain how that theft of the Mona Lisa in 1911 put the painting on page 1 of the New York Times and other newspapers around the world, helping to cement the global reputation that the Mona Lisa still carries today. So that's just one of the insider stories that Elaine shares in today's episode. And honestly, there is so much to take away from this conversation because Elaine has just published a really fascinating book on the Louvre, which is, of course, the world's most visited museum. So she is full of advice and history and stories to share. So in this episode, Elaine takes us off the beaten path in the Louvre, and she shares some of her favorite works of art in the museum, including what she calls the, quote, undiscovered Mona Lisa. She shares some excellent and super practical insider tips on how to make the most of your next visit to the museum. And of course, we can't talk about the Louvre today without talking about the famous heist that captured the world's imagination in October when the crown jewels were stolen from the Louvre in broad daylight at 9:30 in the morning. Elaine tells us that story, and she puts it in the context of the really fascinating history of these jewels, which, let's just say, this isn't actually the first time the French crown jewels have been stolen. Plus, toward the end of our conversation, Elaine shares 3 museums that she loves and recommends that aren't the Louvre. I was super excited to hear these recommendations because I've never been to any of these 3 museums. So you will get all of that and much more today. So get cozy, settle in. Thank you for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams.
Hello, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, the show to help you travel the world on your terms. I'm Paige McClanahan, travel writer, author, and former travel journalist. I'm also a member of the Zero to Travel Host Collective, and I'm thrilled to be with you today for this episode about the world's most visited museum, the Louvre, which happens to be right here in Paris, the city I call home. Before we get into it, remember to sign up for the free podcast newsletter to keep in touch and get updates on new episodes. The newsletter also helps you stay on top of travel trends, get money-saving travel advice, and loads more. Check that out at zerototravel.com/newsletter. So today's guest is Elaine Sciolino, and Elaine is a super impressive woman. She's the former Paris bureau chief of the New York Times, and she's the author of a fascinating new book called Adventures in the Louvre: How to Fall in Love with the World's Greatest Museum. I love that, how to fall in love with the museum. Elaine has lived in Paris for more than 20 years, and this isn't the first book she's written about the city. Elaine is also the author of The Seine, the river that made Paris, and The Only Street in Paris, which hit the New York Times bestseller list when it was published in 2016. She's also the author of a book called La Séduction, which I'm going to have to check out someday. But before coming to France, Elaine was a reporter in Iran and Iraq, as well as in New York, where she covered the United Nations, among many other topics. She joined the New York Times in 1984, and get this, she was the first woman to serve as the New York Times chief diplomatic correspondent. I would love, personally, to hear some stories about that experience over a glass of wine with Elaine one day. But for today's episode, I got to talk to Elaine about the Louvre. And this museum, it can be kind of intimidating, right? I mean, it's massive, it's often pretty crowded, and of course, it's most famous for one iconic painting, the Mona Lisa. But of course, there's so much more to this museum than the Mona Lisa. But how do we kind of get under the skin of this place? How can we find a quiet corner where we can actually have a moment to connect with a piece of art that might be 500 years old? You know, at a really practical level, how can we navigate this museum without, running out of patience or like losing our minds? And if you listen to this show, then I know you're the kind of person who doesn't want to go to the Louvre just to tick a box and, get a selfie in front of the world's most famous painting, right? We want to go and really experience something. We want to come away maybe not, transformed by the experience, but moved. And I think this conversation with Elaine Sciolino is really going to help you do that on your next visit to the Louvre. With all of her insider stories and history, with the works of art she loves most, as well as with all her incredibly helpful practical advice, this conversation with Elaine Sciolino has so much to offer. So there's a lot to look forward to in this episode. Be sure to stick around on the back end, and I'm going to share my number one takeaway from this conversation, something that I'm definitely not going to miss on my next trip to the Louvre. Looking forward to sharing that with you, but for now, let's get into the interview. So, Elaine Sciolino, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast.
Thank you so much, Paige. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you today.
So, in the introduction to your book, you described the Louvre as, quote, the biggest, grandest, most visited public repository of art in the world. Why do you think this museum, more than any other, has such a hold on our collective imagination? What is it about the Louvre that fascinates us so much?
Depends on who you ask. If you ask anybody who knows the Louvre only because it has the Mona Lisa, people will say, the Louvre equals Mona Lisa. I have to go to the Louvre because I have to see this incredible work by Leonardo da Vinci. But if you ask a French person why the Louvre is important because the Louvre, more than any other building in France, represents the history of France from the Middle Ages to the present day. It was the fortress in Paris, and then it was a palace for the kings. And it was only with the French Revolution that it was turned into a museum for all the people.
I think that's fascinating. I love the overlap, especially with the French Revolution. The palace opened up and it was all the art of the kings and the aristocrats who had maybe just had their heads chopped off that became, free to visit for everyone in the country.
Yeah, they brought it all together, all the art that they had looted from the churches and from noblemen, brought in some of the works from the kings, and opened up the museum during the French Revolution to all the people, and except you couldn't bring in dogs and you couldn't be drunk. And then over the centuries, it expanded and developed treasures and collections from ancient Greece, ancient Persia, ancient Mesopotamia. And so that's why you've got this melange or mixture of all different eras and geographical places.
And I want to ask you later in the interview about some of your favorite, maybe off the beaten track sort of treasures to look for in the Louvre, because as you say, it is so diverse and, art from so many parts of the world. But of course, we can't talk about the Louvre without talking about Mona Lisa. And I was really intrigued to read in your book that the Louvre's director of paintings has, I think you call it, quote, mixed feelings about the Mona Lisa. You also write that the Mona Lisa, quote, both enslaves and empowers the Louvre. What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, she's a blessing and a curse. I mean, can you think of any other museum in the world that is identified by one work of art? I mean, I can't. I mean, if you say the Met, what one work of art defines the Met? Maybe the Temple of Dender. If you say, the Hermitage, well, I can't really think of one work of art that defines the Hermitage. But if you say, oh, I've got to go to the Louvre, it's because you've got to go see this very small painting that sits in the Louvre's largest gallery, and often disappoints because she kind of looks jaundiced under all of these different layers of yellow, and she's small, she's hung much too high, and she's hung far away from the audience, so you can't really get close and intimate with her. It's a real disappointment.
And you write in the book that something like 20,000 people visit the Mona Lisa every day. Is that right?
Yes, something like close to 70% of the people who come to the Louvre for the first time come to see this one painting. It's really a shame because, I mean, I often think they should do like have a special Mona Lisa kind of collection, because deep in the Louvre, they do have a collection of about 11,000 works of Mona Lisa kitsch that was once collected by a French engineer who had an obsession with Mona Lisa. And over the decades, he collected kitsch, and he donated it all to the Louvre, and they've got it all locked up. And I've seen it, but wouldn't it be fabulous to pull out all of the Mona Lisa carpets and coffee mugs and beer steins and clocks and even one size fits all condoms with Mona Lisa's face on it? It's just it would attract a lot of people.
I agree with you completely. When I read that part of your book where you described that kitsch collection, I was like, the world needs to see this, but the
world
Louvre
needs to see
people
it. Yeah,
aren't
absolutely.
about to sort of open it up.
No, because the Louvre is like purgatory. Going into the Louvre and going to have to, if you're if you have any visitors coming to Paris and you have to take them to the Louvre to go see the Mona Lisa, it really is the least favorite job you've got as a host in Paris.
If there's a listener out there who has heard of the Mona Lisa, of course, who has heard of the Louvre, but has never been there, can you give us a sense of what that experience of visiting the Mona Lisa in person is actually like? Because I think you paint this really beautifully in your book.
Well, you got to paint the picture of what it's like, first of all, getting into the Louvre for normal people who don't have a private tour guide or who don't have a subscription to a membership to the French Friends of the Louvre, or don't have a friend in the Louvre to get them in, have to go through one of the entrances that brings you down into the basement of the pyramid. And that means sometimes waiting in line for an hour, even if you've got a timed ticket. So before you even get into the Louvre, you're tired, you're irritated. If you're with kids, they're already saying, Mom, Dad, do I have to go to this museum? It's not fun to go to the Louvre. So before you even get in, you've got it. I say it's like going into a war zone, and I have tactics for trying to make it less difficult. But you get into the museum, and then you've got to go find the Mona Lisa. You finally find her, and you get into her room, and there are hundreds of other people who are standing there trying to get close to her just to take a selfie with her. I don't know why people want to take a selfie with her. It's like somehow to say, okay, we came, we saw, we conquered. But it's a big deal to take a selfie with the Mona Lisa. And then you've been to Paris, you've been to the Louvre. If you've got this, the whole episode can take over an hour just to get in to see her. And that's not necessarily fun, which is one reason why I wrote this book, to tell people how to have fun when you're confronting this extraordinary place that was a fortress that's impossible to master, where I still get lost every time I go in. And how do you survive?
Well, we're going to get to some of the practical tips that you share in your book in a minute. I love that you have an appendix sort of dedicated to this question. But yeah, I mean, the Mona Lisa, I think it is fascinating. Like you say, that this is the only museum in the world that is represented really by a single painting or a single work of art in the public imagination. And one thing that you share in the book is that one of the reasons why she's so famous is actually the fact that she was stolen. Was it in 1911? Is that right? Can you tell that story and how that sort of catapulted her or helped to catapult her to fame?
At the time that Leonardo painted her, people who looked at her knew that it was a special painting. So it wasn't as if it's not a great painting, which it is, a great painting by Leonardo da Vinci. In 1911, an Italian nationalist decides that the Mona Lisa really belongs in Italy. So he dresses up as a worker, and on a Monday, which was when the museum was closed, goes in, takes the Mona Lisa off the wall, sticks her, hides her under his coat, leaves with her, and keeps her in a suitcase under his bed for however long until he goes back to Italy and then tries to sell her. And that's when he gets caught. But it took about 2 years before the Mona Lisa was rediscovered. So that says maybe it'll take that long before the crown jewels get found, but that's for later in our discussion. So in the meantime, what happened? 1911 coincided with a period with media around the world. It was kind of like the internet revolution of the age, when suddenly newspapers were able to be printed on decent quality paper and with good ink. So there was a revolution of newspapers around the world, and the Mona Lisa became a daily global front page story. In fact, I even found the front page story in the New York Times that day where the Mona Lisa was the lead of the paper on the front page. And it stayed on the front pages because it was a great tale to tell, where is the Mona Lisa? In Paris, songs were written about the Mona Lisa. There were letters written about the Mona Lisa. There were Mona Lisa ghosts. There were Mona Lisa plays. She became a global, I hate to use the word icon, but she really was a global icon from 1911 on. And that sort of superstar status has stayed with her ever since.
Amazing. Amazing. I would love to hear about some of the works of art that aren't quite as famous as the Mona Lisa. Maybe some works of art that you find personally most compelling that a lot of people might miss or just not to think to look for. Take us off the beaten path in the Louvre. What should we be? What should we go? What should we go see?
It's interesting you asked this question, and you evoked early on that the head of the paintings department really has mixed feelings about the Mona Lisa because she's a blessing and a curse. So I asked him one day, I said, Sebastian, can you name 5 other paintings that you like better than the Mona Lisa? And he said yes. And so we had some fun with it. And one of the paintings he picked was Titian's Man with a Glove, which is, Titian was a contemporary more or less of Leonardo, little later. But this painting is in the same room as the Mona Lisa, and nobody pays any attention to her. I mean, Titian's Man with a Glove, this guy is gorgeous. He's got a beautiful face. He's got a lace collar and cuffs. He's just beautifully dressed. He's so beautiful that Dame Judi Dench, the British actress, when she was asked on that BBC series, Desert Island or whatever it was called, was asked, if you were on a desert island, what would you take with you? And she said, I would take the Man with a Glove because I would just love having him hang around. And I thought this was really interesting. And I looked at Titian's Man with a Glove and I thought to myself, I'm a former war correspondent. Do I really want a guy who wears lace collar and cuffs with me if we've got to fight pirates and snakes on a desert island someplace? And I thought to myself, no. Who I want with me is I want Antonello Damascena's condottieri, who is a mercenary with a scar over his left lip, and he looks at you with this dark look, like just like all my Sicilian uncles. And that's who I want to be with me when we're confronting the pirates and the snakes. And if you would just let me read what I wrote about him, because I love him. I think he's the best.
Absolutely.
I think he's like one of the best paintings in the whole museum. Okay. His eyes stare through you with the hard look of the Sicilian South that some of my ancestors had. You want to touch the scar above his upper lip and ask him to tell the story behind it. Few visitors stop to look at him, so we're often alone. Sebastian Allar, the head of paintings, once said that this painting suggests that Antonello Damascena was as talented as Leonardo da Vinci. So I call my Sicilian condottieri the undiscovered Mona Lisa. And that's the fun about the Louvre, is that every day you could go there and discover something new.
Absolutely. Ooh, the undiscovered Mona Lisa. I will, on my next trip to the Louvre, I will make a beeline to Elaine Sciolino's undiscovered Mona Lisa to appreciate his masculine beauty in person.
Yeah, and you can get really close to him. It's not like the Mona Lisa. You could like really bond with the condottieri. You know, you just yeah, fall in love with a man in a painting.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
This episode is brought to you by Fandango. People say fans are too distracted these days, but the truth is, when a great movie hits the screen, you show up, you stay glued, invested, part of the story. And without fans like you, there'd be no cinema magic, no shared moments. So head to Fandango.com to get tickets, stream, or rent or buy top movies and series. Fandango loves fans.
Now, back to the show.
You know, thinking about other sort of, paintings that people might, or works of art that people might look for, I mean, maybe important to keep in mind as you write in the book that the Louvre is supposed to be covering art only up to 1848, right? And so most of the Impressionists and other works were moved to the Musée d'Orsay or elsewhere. But you do say that there are some unexpected Impressionists that you can find in the Louvre. What's that story?
Oh, it was great. There was a guy who was a donor to the Louvre, and he donated all of his collection with the understanding that it had to stay in the Louvre. And so a few of the paintings, just a few, but there's a wonderful Degas that you would not have normally seen in the Louvre. But if you're obsessed by Impressionists, go and see this collection that's hidden away in the Louvre. You asked earlier what are some of the collections I like that nobody ever goes to see. And, I spent years covering Iran, and for a long time, the New York Times did tours to Iran, and they would invite me to kind of be the lecturer, kind of like the comic relief with the regular tour guides. And whenever we went to Persepolis, the Iranian tour guide would tell the American tourists, if you really want to see what Persepolis should look like, go to the Louvre. Because the Louvre has collections from the twin museum to Persepolis that was in Susa, and it has works of art that you don't even see inside Iran. Extraordinary colored, tiled walls and beautiful painted bowls. And you go into this collection and you feel like you're in Iran. And in real Persepolis, they so respect what the Louvre has that you can buy postcards of some of the works of art in the Louvre in Persepolis in Iran. And so I say to any visitor who won't go to Iran because it's too hard or too difficult or too challenging to get a visa or potentially too dangerous, go to the Louvre and discover ancient Persia there.
Oh, fantastic. And, I know when I visited the Louvre, the Islamic art section, really, even, when the sort of main European art sections, the area around the Mona Lisa is just heaving with people, you go down to the Islamic art and it's just, quiet and calm. And you have, not this place to yourself, but it's just a very different experience. The Islamic art and also the Egyptians, my kids really loved going to see the mummies, which is something you recommend as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the Islamic department, I think, is, as you say, it's like one of the undiscovered centers in the Louvre, and a lot of people don't know. But if you go to the back of the main entry hall, there's a staircase that takes you downstairs, and it's always quiet, and you can look at these extraordinary works of art, and you can be alone with these works of art, and it's peaceful and fun. And if you need a break when you're in the Louvre, I tell people to go down there. Dark, quiet, except maybe there might be the recording of a Ferdowsi poem about wine being played for you. And then, of course, the mummies. That's so much fun. I mean, in addition to the people mummies, there's like animal mummies, and nobody ever looks at the animal. Whoever knew that there were animal mummies? There's a cat mummy. It's great. If you like cats, you want to go see the mummy.
Oh, fantastic. You also write about something in the book that I had no idea was possible, but you can actually go to a consultation room and have a one-on-one interaction with a work of art, a historic work of art. How does that? Tell us about that.
Oh, that's one of the most fun things to do in all of Paris. I think to go into what the graphic arts department and actually bond with works of art that are on paper, like pastels or engravings or drawings, watercolors, is one of the glories of life for anybody who's an art lover. It's a little bit complicated because you have to go through a French bureaucracy. You have to sign up in advance. You have to tell them why you want to go in. But normal people, you don't have to be an art historian or a scholar or have a PhD in something. You can sign up and you can get into the consultation room. And it's one of the most beautiful libraries. It kind of looks like a library with beautiful oak desks, leather-topped oak desks, and green shaded lamps, and just be peaceful. And you sign up and you ask them what works of art you want to see, and they bring them all out. And then you can be alone with Durer engravings or Delacroix and drawings, and it's you can smell the paper, and you can actually touch the paper because they let you
I
look
was
at
going to
these
ask,
works of
you're
art.
actually allowed to handle them.
Yes,
That's amazing.
you have to handle them with care. You can't bring in a pen. You have to use one of their pencils, but you can take pictures of them. You can spend as long as you want with them. And I mean, imagine seeing Delacroix's courtyard in Tangier. I mean, to be up close with it, with no filter, with no glass over it, and not far away. It's truly one of the most pleasurable cultural experiences in Paris.
Oh, wow. I am so excited to go do that. I had no idea until reading your book that was possible to do. I wouldn't have guessed at all that it was possible to do. So
You got to do it.
Excellent. I'll let you know how it goes.
Your kids are a little too young to do it, but you can do it.
Okay. Well, I'll report back to them, and maybe when they're a little older. But I guess if we're talking about getting our hands on the treasures of the Louvre, we have to we can't talk about the Louvre today without talking about this famous heist that happened in October. First of all, I would love to just hear your thoughts on the crown jewels in general, because I was fascinated to learn in the book about the history of the crown jewels and how actually the French state sold off most of the crown jewels, in the 1800s, and a lot of them went to an American businessman, which I had no idea.
Well, the Louvre doesn't like to talk about, this was even before the theft of in October. The history of the crown jewels is fascinating because during the French Revolution, a lot of the crown jewels were stolen. They were being kept in a furniture warehouse right near the Louvre, and they were stolen by brigands, drunken brigands who came in, and eventually most of them came back. But one of the crown jewels that didn't come back was a very beautiful blue diamond that was on a voyage to England where it was recut, it was stolen, it was sold, it was resold. And if you can believe it, it has ended up in the Smithsonian Museum. So the Smithsonian Museum has one of the most beautiful blue diamonds in the world that once belonged to Louis XIV. I wonder, I mean, so when I want to play with it, I think to myself, why can't the Louvre get it back? It once belonged to the Louvre. They can prove that it
Seriously.
belonged to the Louvre. Why, when you think about restitution and all that, I mean, it would be the ultimate restitution.
That would be headline news. I mean, because the Hope Diamond, this is the Hope Diamond.
It's the Hope Diamond. Yeah. Is going to see the Hope Diamond. Did you have any idea?
It's huge.
Yeah, it's like one of the most famous works of art that we have in the United States. I think it's if it's not the most viewed work of art in the Smithsonian, it's one of the most viewed works of art. And who knows that this belongs to France? So that was the first real story about the crown jewels. Then the second big story about the crown jewels is during the Third Republic, towards the end of the 19th century, the Third Republic was obsessed with not ever turning back towards the monarchy. So the Third Republic wanted to get rid of any sign of monarchy, and that meant we don't want the crown jewels. So the Third Republic organized this huge auction that took place in the Louvre, actually, and they advertised about it all over the world. They invited jewelers and collectors from all over the world, the United States, Turkey, Venice, blah, blah. Okay. They have this huge auction. They auction off 77,000 gems and most of the crown jewels. They only kept a few of them, a few of the historical ones, or a few of the ones that were so valuable, big, two huge diamonds, that they thought they better keep them. So what happens? They have this huge auction. Charles Tiffany buys a third of the inventory and sells all these jewels within a month to rich Belle Epoque Americans. In fact, it's really interesting because today we're in Paris today, but today Tiffany's has a huge spread in Figaro, the daily newspaper, and there's a huge article as part of this whole series on how we got the crown jewels back in the end of the 19th century. So this was a big deal for Tiffany's. In fact, I did a story for the New York Times on the fact that Tiffany's has 4 of the crown jewels. They keep them in a warehouse in New Jersey, and they pulled them out of the New Jersey warehouse and they brought them to the Fifth Avenue Tiffany's, and I got to see and actually touch crown jewels that once belonged to France.
Wow.
It's cool, isn't it? Yeah.
Something tells me the security around that whole experience would have been maybe a little bit tighter than the security in the Apollo Gallery in October. What do you know about the actual heist, or how have you been following that?
It's like a daily soap opera because the heist itself, the theft itself, was brilliantly executed, the entrance, but there was no exit strategy. So the exit strategy was amateurish. And what happened is 4 thieves, petty criminals, basically, as far as we know. 3 of them have been 3 of the suspects have been arrested. Break in through a window on the Seine River side of the Louvre, on the second floor, into the Apollo Gallery, and they go in with what's called a tool called an angle grinder. This is a tool that you can buy at any high level quincaillerie, a hardware store, okay? And basically what it does is it grinds through glass. It doesn't break the glass, it grinds through the glass. What a lot of people don't know, and what I wrote in a story in the New York Times, is that the firefighters who guard the Louvre, because there are firefighters there permanently, they sleep there, they eat there, they exercise there, they train on this exact tool. In case they ever have to break through this kind of vitrine, this kind of glass case, or one of the other glass cases that has like great fancy gold watches or whatever. So they have to be trained to saw through this, grind through this kind of glass. So it was a very quick operation. It just took 7 minutes to get in, get them, and get out. However, what they did going out is they left traces of DNA on various articles of clothing. One of the tools, they had to leave this fancy furniture mover that had brought them up to the second floor window. And so you had that as evidence. One thing that the French police and investigative forces are good at is doing this kind of serious investigation. I used to cover terrorism for the New York Times, and the French are used to doing serious terrorist investigations. So they have really good DNA services and scientific labs. They have very good penetration, both in terms of undercover agents and in terms of monitoring laptops or telephones throughout all of the French suburbs where three of these guys are believed to have lived. And so they quickly identified some of the suspects. I mean, one arrest that was so amazing is that shortly after the heist, the guys got away, but shortly after the heist, they arrest one of the guys in Charles de Gaulle International Airport as he's ready to get on a plane for Algeria. I mean, this was absolutely brilliant police work. So what you have is you had a great heist that was worthy of Ocean's 11. Then you had the escape that was worthy of a Feydeau farce. And then you have the police doing an incredibly good terrorist investigation. So that's where we are now.
Yeah, and all part of the continued myth making around the Louvre, I think. I mean, it's been amazing just to see, all of the memes and just how much this has completely captured the public imagination. Once again, this museum is kind of putting itself right in the middle of lots of conversations.
Lots of conversations, yes.
And they still haven't gotten back the crown jewels that were stolen. They've caught the guys, but they haven't actually recuperated the jewels. Is that
they
right?
They haven't. Although President Macron, the president of France, said that they were going to get them back. And I don't know if they've got some secret information or if it was just, he was saying it was wishful thinking.
Well, okay. I would love to turn now to some of your practical strategies for making the most of any visit to the Louvre, because you said it can be a sort of intense, full-on experience. And in the appendix of your book, you have a lot of really helpful strategies. Can you walk us through some of those? Oh, I know one of them is eat beforehand, right?
Well, it's better than that. It's my mantra is never go to the Louvre on an empty stomach or with a full bladder, because you will not find a good restaurant in the Louvre, and you could wait 20 minutes for a toilet. So what I tell people is to go to a cafe near the Louvre to get something to eat. And I like the Café Nemours, which is the food is rather banal, but it's kind of an iconic place in Paris because it's right across the Place from the Comédie Française. And because it's located right in the center of Paris, you've got people who come there from the culture ministry for lunch, or actors from the Comédie Française. If you're a Comédie Française fan, it's kind of nice to see Guillaume Gallienne sitting there next to you, having a steak frite. And the Conseil d'État is there, which is the highest French court, so people come there. So it's in the tourist part of Paris, but it's still a French kind of cafe restaurant. And it's the kind of restaurant where you would go and it would not be weird to sit there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and order a glass of champagne all by yourself as a single woman and hope that something wonderful will happen, because it could. It's that kind of place. So I tell people, go there, just have a croque monsieur, talk to the guys, they're nice. The waiters are all dressed up in their, black and white little uniforms. Use the toilet in the base, go down the stairs, use the toilet, and then you're ready for the Louvre, which is battle. It's a battlefield. The Louvre was built as a fortress. It was renovated, restored maybe 20 times over the centuries. If you go there now, it's based on 25 different levels. It's 400 rooms. If you wanted to walk through every single room and you were a walker, it would be 18,000 steps. It is work to get into the Louvre. So you've got to be rested and ready. So that's one battle to be prepared for before you go in. Then you got the question of, how do you want to go into the Louvre? If you're a normal person and you're a neophyte and you've got to go see the Mona Lisa, what I tell people is, if you really want to make it easy on yourself, either hire yourself a private guard, or see if you can sign on to one of the Louvre's online visits. And there are a couple in English, and you sometimes have to do it a month before, but sign on, and so that you are going to be sort of taken care of when you get into the Louvre. Now, if you're an art lover, and you've seen the Mona Lisa and you've seen the other two superstars, which are the Victory of Samothrace, the big statue with the wings, or the Venus de Milo, who doesn't have arms, then what I tell people, if you're really serious and you really want to get to know the Louvre, what I tell people is invest €100 and become a member of the French Amis du Louvre. Not the American Friends of the Louvre, but the French one. The French one, it's €100. And for €100, you can skip the line and you don't have to buy a time ticket, and you go in and out however you want. So you want to go in for a half an hour just to go look at something. You go in you wave this card. It's like this magic gold card, and they just smile at you and you go in. And I think it's the best cultural buy in Paris. Now, don't confuse it with the American Friends of the Louvre, because that costs like $1,000 or $1,500 to become a member of. But the French one, it's the greatest cultural card. I mean, you're walking by the Louvre and you say, you know what? I think I'd like to stop in the Louvre and maybe I'll go see something interesting. And you go in. And isn't that cool? It's really great.
That's wonderful. I had no idea. Yeah, so it's the Amis du Louvre that people should check, and you navigate it in French. But what a deal! And
it's a great deal. And if you're young, if you're a student, you can get it for I don't know, €15. Get a Amis du Louvre card. If you're a couple, you get a discount. You live in Paris, Paige. You really have to become an Amis du Louvre.
I'll do it. Yeah. Absolutely.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
Not sure how to tackle your taxes? Are you sweating the small print? You may be experiencing FOMO, the fear of messing up. The answer? Using TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They help you get your biggest refund, and then we help you do more with it, with a personalized plan designed to help you hit your money goals. It's time to take your taxes to the max. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
Now, back to the show.
You also say, booking your ticket online is a good idea, although, of course, this isn't going to necessarily mean you avoid lines when you get there. You also say to avoid Mondays. And, of course, the Louvre is closed on Tuesdays. But why avoid Mondays? The Musée d'Orsay is closed that day. Is that right?
Yeah. Avoid Mondays because the Musée d'Orsay is closed. Avoid Wednesday afternoons because school children are out of school. And a lot of times they come to the Louvre. I mean, one good time to come to the Louvre is in the evening, because now Wednesday evenings and Friday evenings, the Louvre is open. And sometimes if you come in an hour and a half before the Louvre is going to close, you can get in, and it can be a delight. So you've got to sort of strategize, and if you come to the Louvre on a Tuesday, I actually wrote a chapter in the book about Tuesdays at the Louvre, because a lot of people come to the Louvre not knowing that it's closed on Tuesdays. But what I tell people to do is just go a few blocks away to the Bibliothèque Nationale, the French National Library, which is absolutely glorious. It's open on Tuesdays. It has a wonderful cafe where you can get a decent lunch and a beautiful garden. And you can get into the main reading room for free. And if you've got kids, it's great because they've got a gazillion comic books for kids to read. And then if you want to go to the museum part of it, it's like 11 euros, and you go up the stairs, and it's beautiful, and they love you, and it's a joy.
That's wonderful. And that's the Bibliothèque Nationale Richelieu. Is that right?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Right. Not the big building that was built by Mitterrand that looks like a book, and it looks like a skyscraper. No, not that one. Paige, you got to take your kids there. Oh no, it's it's fabulous for kids, because you walk into this glorious, glorious room with beautiful mosaics and colored ceilings, and your kids can just get involved with looking at all of these, what they call bande dessinée, these comic book books for free. And then you take them to the Rose's Bakery, the annex to Rose's Bakery, which is a bakery that started on the Rue des Martyrs. And you eat well, you get a little culture, you can sit in the garden, and it's one of my favorite places to go to in Paris.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you happen to come to the Louvre on a Tuesday, you still have this option.
I have one story in the book where I decided to write this chapter because I had gotten it. Sometimes they let journalists in on Tuesdays because that's when they have press events. So I was coming out of the Louvre, and there was this Spanish couple, and the woman was just beside herself. She had 2 little kids, and she was just at the end of her rope. And she said to the guard, "Well, how come she just is coming out of the Louvre and I can't go into the Louvre?" And he's got that smirky French face saying, "Ha ha ha, you didn't know." And he said, "The Louvre is closed." They said, "Well, she came out." So I said, "Look, do you speak a little bit of English? Because my Spanish, it's kind of high school Spanish." She said, "Yes." I said, "Take the kids and go to the Bibliothèque Nationale and go to the main reading room and just sit them down in these really comfy chairs. And there's lots of comic books. And then take them for like a really fancy, pastry at Rose's Bakery, and you will be thrilled." And she kissed me. She was so happy. So I was thinking I could stand out there with one of those sandwich boards that says "Come to the Bibliothèque Nationale" on a Tuesday.
Well, there you go. And offering a fantastic public service and offering that information to people.
Public service. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you about 3 museums besides the Louvre that you love and would recommend to people. But before we do that, one last question about the Louvre, because you mentioned this at the book, and I imagine this news was probably coming out just as you were finishing the manuscript. But I'd love to ask you about the ambitious plans for the Louvre over the next 5 to 10 years, because it sounds like we could see some big changes coming for the museum. What can we expect?
It all comes down to money. There's a great plan to build a whole new wing for the Louvre, an underground wing on the eastern side of the Louvre. The Louvre is huge. The Louvre is like, if you count the Tuileries, it's like a half a mile long. The eastern side of the Louvre, it's a very beautiful facade, and you can't enter into the Louvre Museum through that facade. And Laurence Descartes, with the support of the president of France, is determined to build an underground entrance with a special space for the Mona Lisa, with rooms that explain all about the Mona Lisa, a special space for temporary exhibits, because the Louvre does not have as much space as it would like for short exhibits, and a way to get into the main museum if you choose through this entrance, so that it would be like a double ticket system. You could decide you just want to go see the Mona Lisa, or you can see all of the Louvre. The challenge with this idea, and it's just in the planning stage right now, is that it could cost, so far the figure is for this part of the plan, 666 million euros. The Louvre doesn't have this kind of money. It has to raise a lot of money through private donations. I mean, the Louvre doesn't have this money. The country doesn't have this money. It's not like when François Mitterrand built the pyramid in front of the Louvre with its beautiful, great entrance. France was awash in money for cultural projects. So there's no money from the state. The money will have to be raised in order to do this. It comes following the theft of the jewels. So it's like a dagger to the heart of the Louvre and a dagger into the heart of France. And so this is why I say this is like an ongoing soap opera, because we don't know at this stage whether or not or when this plan will come to fruition.
Well, it seems like ongoing soap opera is a sort of an apt term to apply to the Louvre. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for how that develops. But before we go, Elaine, we've been talking for almost an hour now. I would love to ask you to share 3 museums that you love and would recommend to our listeners, because I imagine, you're clearly a very seasoned museum goer in the Louvre alone. But tell us about some of the other places that you love to visit.
Well, let's have some fun with this. First, I've already talked about one, which is the museum in the Bibliothèque Nationale, because if you go up the stairs, you walk into a mini museum that has many of the same beautiful works of art that you would see in a place like the Louvre, except they're better lit and they're more newly posted and presented, so that you can see absolutely beautiful works of silver, or even, ancient Mesopotamian works of art, beautiful cameos. It's another world, and it's small, but they also have, since you're a writer, Paige, manuscripts from some of the most famous writers in France. So isn't it glorious to see manuscripts by Proust, see how Proust wrote, or Sartre, or Simone de Beauvoir. It's just, or Victor Hugo, to just see their writing. You're in touch with these other writers, and it's just, for me, it's a magical place, and it's a small enough space that it's easily done, which is important, to have a place that feels accessible and doable, where you can find everything easily. So I really, that, as I said earlier in our conversation, it is one of the places that, it's one of my favorite places in all of Paris. One of my other places, which is in honor of you as the mother of kids, is in an engineering school, the Paris School of Mines, near the
Oh,
yeah. Do you know this museum? I wrote about it for
I've
the New
heard
York
of it, but
Times.
haven't been there.
Well, you got to go, because it's right near the Luxembourg Gardens. Nobody ever goes to this museum. It is like it's like going back in time, because it has absolutely extraordinary vitrine, glass cases that go back more than a century. It has extraordinary works on display, about 5,000 of its objects from about 100,000 objects. The most extraordinary stones. Things like samples from Mars, samples from the moon, fluorescent minerals that glow under ultraviolet light, beautiful opals in all sorts of colors, pink, red, green, blue, purple. It also has a very small collection of crown jewels. So, right now the Apollo Gallery is closed. Yeah, I know. Oh, wow. Isn't that the coolest thing? Because what happened after when they sold most of the crown jewels is they've got about 200 on display out of a collection of about 1,200. Pink topaz and amethyst were not considered really important jewels. So they just sloughed all of them off to this museum. And also there were even like 45 small emeralds from Napoleon III's crown. So everybody's been talking about, his wife Eugenie's crown getting stolen and all that, or they tried to steal it, but they broke it, and it's now collected, but to be restored. Well, there's like little emeralds from Napoleon III. They're right there. So it's a perfect thing. They've got gems and stones from all over the world. So it's really fun. So that is a definite must. Then let's go outside of Paris and go to the Louvre Museum. You don't want to go to the Louvre.
I'm so excited that you're mentioning this because I love this example in your book of tourism reviving an industrial, a kind of like declining industrial. So anyway, but yeah, go ahead. I love this and I'm so excited to go. But please go ahead.
It's like an hour and 10 minutes out of Paris. You take the train from the Gare du Nord. It's a direct train and you end up in this town, and there's like a mini Louvre in this town, and it's no wait. It's free. The main collection is free. They love visitors. They're really nice to you. So like when you get people who come to Paris and they say, "Oh, Paige, I think I want to go to Giverny or Fontainebleau or some other place, or even Versailles," you say, "Why don't we go to Lens instead and make a day of Lens?" And it's an old city. It was mostly destroyed in World War I, but it was partly rebuilt. There are these wonderful odd Art Deco facades. Then for kids, there are these extraordinary coal slag mountains, these two huge hills of old, bits of coal waste, and you can climb up to the top. And then there's a little restaurant that's right across the street from the Art Deco train station that has the best French fries in the world. So it's a natural place to go, and it's totally wonderful. And if you come to them and say, "Hey, I'm an American and I came here from Paris," they will welcome you with open arms.
Oh, that's wonderful, Elaine. Thank you so much. So we have the Bibliothèque Nationale de France Richelieu, we have the Paris School of Mines, and we have the Louvre Museum, just, not too far outside of Paris.
Why don't we go do some of this together sometime? It would be fun.
Oh my gosh. Elaine, wow. Yeah, I would love to. Let's keep in touch. Thank you so much for this conversation, Elaine. Thank you so much for your beautiful book, which was fascinating, very engaging, super readable. I would recommend it highly to anybody who's interested in this museum at all. And yeah, thank you for your recommendations of 3 other museums to check out. So it's been a wonderful conversation.
And I hope it's the first of many, Paige. I think we have a lot of things to talk about.
So there you have it, Elaine Sciolino. Thank you so much again to Elaine for taking the time to come on the show. What a pleasure to talk to her and get this super insider perspective on the world's most visited museum. So at the top of the episode, I promised to share my number one takeaway from that conversation. And here it is. I want to go see this undiscovered Mona Lisa that Elaine told us about, the painting that she said she would take with her to a desert island. So I did a little digging on this after recording the conversation with Elaine. The artist, as she says, is Antonello de Messina, and the painting is called Il Condottieri. I hope my Italian pronunciation isn't too far off there. But apparently, Il Condottieri means the leader of a band of mercenaries. And from the image I found of this painting online, I mean, this guy certainly looks like somebody who you wouldn't want to pick a fight with, but he's just so strong and beautiful. And this painting was made in 1475. It now sits in the Denon wing of the Louvre, where I am super excited to go see it one day in person very soon. And maybe I'm going to sneak in one more takeaway here from the conversation. The consultation room. What? Like coming face to face with some of the Louvre's precious works of art, even holding them in your hands, carefully, as Elaine says. Honestly, I never would have guessed that this is the kind of thing that it was possible to do at the Louvre, but that's the beauty of getting to talk to somebody like Elaine, who has such a wealth of knowledge and experience to share. So that's all from me for now. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I will see you again soon. In the meantime, peace and love to you and yours.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.